Hi class, this is the second PowerPoint audio presentation for LP1. Again, sorry they're late. It's taken me a while to get the kinks worked out in the software that I've been using, but I think I've got it. This chapter is, there are two chapters covered in this particular video are business models and concepts. Some of it is a little bit of review from what we talked, but that's how you learn through repetition. Again, e-commerce is sales over the net, while e-business is a broader context that really addresses hardware and infrastructure that businesses use in their day-to-day operations. It doesn't necessarily involve commerce per se. In that context, e-commerce is nested in e-business because you can't do e-commerce without the ability to do e-business. One of the most important things, concepts is, as an MBA student, is this concept of a business model, how a business makes its money, and businesses are constantly looking for additional revenue streams. In the old school, it was normally through new product line extensions or category extensions, but the internet is far more flexible in terms of how it can help companies save money through different efficiencies, as well as open up whole new target markets and business opportunities. It's a wonderful disruptive technology in as much as it has redefined how business is done, not only between firms but through entire industries. And part of this has been digital disruption, the ability to, for example, digitize certain products like print, text, music, and provide them in different forms and actually deliver them over the internet as an entirely new distribution channel. One of them challenges for a company is sustaining its technological advances, obviously, because technologies change so quickly. I think 5 years from now, it'll be really interesting to take a look at Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook and see, one, how they are competing with one another, how they've morphed it, if at all, or gone out of business entirely, and what are new players, if any, in that space, as these spaces change quickly, just like search engines have. A really neat aspect of the internet is these 8 key elements that are noted here. The value proposition, and my definition of a value proposition is old school from the 80s when I was in the MBA program. It still remains my favorite, and it goes something like this: that which distinguishes a product or service in the mind's eye of the customer relative to the competition. I'll say it again real quickly: that which distinguishes a product or service in the mind's eye of the customer relative to the competition. A more current definition by, say, Kotler and Armstrong in their text is a set of benefits or values that a company promises its customers. But either way, you could say it's that which distinguishes companies from one another. It's first cousins with how they differentiate themselves. Again, as I just noted, the internet is capable of defining and creating whole new revenue streams, and that come from various market opportunities. Think about how Uber is disrupting that industry and the opportunities it creates. Peripheral industries that are automotive related, or revenue streams. I'm giving you hints on 1.4. The revenue streams that are generated from automobiles. There's myriad revenue streams and industry dependencies related to the automobile that will be compromised by Uber. The competitive environment has been changed considerably. You think of the printing industry, the travel industry, stock market industry, all of which have been changed competitively because of the introduction of the internet. Competitive advantages have been built, competitive advantages have been completely disassembled. One has to have a market strategy if they're going to have an internet presence. That is how they're going to promote their business. And you have to understand the organizational changes that will occur if you have an internet presence, how they will morph, and how that's been the case in myriad of other industries and firms in the marketplace. There didn't used to be a CIO. Now they're integral. People with technical expertise really was about keeping your computers up and running. It's far more than that as far as software, data analysis, and that sort of thing. So small businesses especially often miscalculate. That was a UPS truck just went by. He'll be out of business soon enough. Just kidding. Anyway, most small businesses underestimate the change in expertise and personnel needs that are affected as a consequence of having an internet commerce dimension. When I first started teaching this course in the mid 90s and later 90s and wrote articles around it, there were 4 available strategies that were defined that are still relevant in my opinion. The first was using the web as a more effective distribution and transaction channel. Those are two different channels. One is to sell things, one is to distribute things. There's lots of businesses that use it as a transaction channel that cannot actually deliver it over the web. Example, you can sell a TV online, but you can't deliver it online. You have to deliver through the FedEx that just went by. On the other hand, if you sell software, music, or books, you can sell them online and you can deliver them online. This is probably the most common element or strategy. It's a more effective communication channel, either through providing information about your company, about your products, whether you're selling or not, advertising, providing catalogs in depth, that richness and depth of information, interacting with your customers directly through email, surveys, etc. It's a very, very effective tool. Information management, gathering, and sharing. As soon as they knew that people were running around, somebody started inventing ways to watch them. Lots of people feel that, even now, I think younger people, that their use of the web is reasonably anonymous, and you feel that way when you're in a room like I'm in right now, and the doors are closed, but the window's open, so there's people driving by, but they don't know what I'm doing. But it's not anonymous. There's all kinds of entities that are watching you all the time, trying to gather information about you on numerous dimensions. And then finally, it's a great way to increase efficiencies and reduce costs, either through the use of e-business and or the use of e-commerce as a buyer, not necessarily as a seller. And then from a marketing standpoint, and these fall out of those strategies, it's from a promotional context, it's a great use as a billboard communication, a transaction vehicle, buyers selling, and in some cases distributing your product. Those relate to the 4 Ps. One of the things that we are concerned about, particularly for small businesses, is the actual cost of an internet presence, and it can be affordable in the several $1,000s range, or for big businesses when you get into lots of servers and lots of new people needed just to run that aspect of the company, it can get extremely expensive in the neighborhood of hundreds of millions of dollars. When I first started out, it was, you could get websites built fairly cheaply, but not as cheap as they're advertised by, say, GoDaddy or some service like that. And even those, I think, one has to be careful. They can get your web up cheaply if it's just a billboard, but when you start adding depth to it, like the ability to do sales online, maintenance costs to keep it fresh, and perform various functions, it can get pricey. As far as infrastructure goes, I've got a couple of upcoming videos nested in the slides that are good, but again, just for review, the internet is all about the interconnected network of thousands of networks and millions of computers that connect myriad different groups, and those are defined by edu, .com, biz, etc., and even by country. Whereas the World Wide Web is really that HTML function that allows us to see pictures and perform what we consider to be traditional business functions. This particular slide contains what I just referred to, a couple of great little 6-7 minute videos. There is some overlap between the two of them, probably 50%, but both of them do a pretty good job of explaining how the internet functions, the relationship between computers, servers, routers, that sort of thing, for any of you that might not know how it works. And again, there's just enough difference between the two that I would say they're both worth a watch. And the dynamics of the videos are just a little bit different, so it makes it not the same as watching two of the same one back to back. Right now, historically, the internet started, primary access was through desktops because that's all there were. Then came laptops. I had one of the first Apple laptops. It was probably about 15 pounds. They've come a long way. Now I've got one of the glassy little lightweight ones that doesn't burn my legs, or wouldn't burn my legs if I carried it on my legs like I used to when I'd fly from Oahu to the Big Island when I'd be going home. I don't even want to think about all the things that were probably affected from having that great big hot, who knows what, producing Mac sitting on my lap for entirely too long. The new platform, of course, for surfing the web, getting information, is more and more through smartphones. 38% of all of it, of all the access to the internet at this point. That's really amazing. And it's, as I've mentioned in some of the comments to some of the DTs, it's largely, I think, generational. Certainly our kids live in a different world than all you and I did 10 years ago, and I live in a different world probably because most of you are in my age than you did 20, 30 years ago. And I think it's going to continue at that pace. I think it was Jeff that said we can hardly keep up with the change as a culture, and I think I understand what he means by that. It's pretty hard for all generations at all time to get on the same page because it's just so hard to keep up on it. So one of the advents of recent computing is cloud computing, and most of us have heard the cloud. It's really just it performs a lot of great functions, the first of which, obviously, you and I can store large amounts of information in third-party real estate, in essence. We don't need to have really powerful computers or notebooks, which are hard to make when they start to get that small. So it's a cheap solution for hardware makers. It's an additional revenue streams for companies. For those like Cisco that make servers, it's a great new revenue source. And on a subscription basis, it's good for the companies that provide them. But basically, it's just a really more efficient way than, say, carrying around an external hard drive to manage your information. There are, of course, issues like security. Be careful what picture you post, I guess, is the lesson from the press most recently. It's worth touching on some pre-internet terms. There's internet intranets, mostly LANs and WANs. A LAN is a local area network. A WAN is a wide area network. If you don't know what those are, uh, they used to exist because businesses didn't have access to the internet for the most part, and so if you were a small company in Minneapolis, a credit union, and you had 5 branches, a local area network would include the network within that one office of that credit union. The computers would be connected, but nobody could access them from the outside. And if there were, as I noted, 5 or 6 offices, you could have dedicated telephone lines that connected those offices so that information could be shared from office to office. So that's a local area network, but it wasn't, again, hooked into any other businesses other than the credit union. If you were Bank of America, you had the same concept and you had offices all over the country. They could be connected through dedicated lines, and that would produce a wide area network. They're basically the same as I understand it. It's just a matter of scope and scale. Do they still exist? Yeah, they still exist. They still exist where you can disassociate yourself from the internet because you want to for a matter of security. So you find them in hospitals still protecting patient information, that sort of thing. And if they're not hooked to the internet, then people can hack them into them from the outside. It doesn't mean that you can't steal that information from the inside, however. This takes us to the end of this second presentation, and I think good business people and leading edge businesses always have an eye on the future. And I find it just, I remember when I was in my 30s, this was in the 80s, when I went to a talk in New York City where Bill Gates, who was, he may have been in his 30s at the time then too, gave a speech. And I'll never forget what he said. That was a long time ago, at least 30 years ago. He said, I see all these amazing things coming as a consequence of technology. I just hope I live long enough to see them. And I think about that often, of all the things that have occurred and in my lifetime, even in just the last 10 or 15 years. And it truly is incredible. And I think the pace is coming faster and faster. I think artificial intelligence, it's really interesting to research and think about from 2 respects. The application of artificial intelligence and things like drones to do rudimentary tasks like move things in a warehouse from one place to another, or to deliver a package for Amazon, and just the impacts that those have on employment and efficiencies and cost savings and other businesses like FedEx and that sort of thing. But also, there's the other dimension that computers are smarter and smarter and are able, and may well, if not already, I mean, I'm not so sure if if they have computers that think like people, that we'd be the first ones to know about it, the general population. So when you get people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk saying, we should have a real concern about artificial intelligence and how smart it might get, I think that's interesting. It's not just science fiction. It's a genuine, intriguing concern, I think. These other 2 things that I had you write about in your seminar assessment, because I did such a poor job of getting these things up so quickly, and I'm sorry for that, were the driverless cars and Uber, and I asked you to take a look at them from a disruptive standpoint. And I think that, I hope as an assignment, that embraces a lot of the information that we covered in chapters 1 through 4. So I hope you have fun with that one. Finally, here's what I used. Sorry, I got the hiccups for 1.5, discussion thread 1.5, and as I noted, you are welcome to discuss that if you want. If you don't, I understand. So there was one more video for chapter 4, and then that concludes LP1 lectures. And now that I'm on track on this, the next ones will be on time. They'll be posted by no later than this coming Friday. Thanks for being patient. Hope you're enjoying the course, and I look forward to the interaction.